Hey, uh, hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to our first edition of the Old School. Very, very honored and happy to have our special guest, Angelo Cataldi, hopping on with us. This first episode is going to be about the Buddy Ryan era, and you know, while we bask in the glory of the Super Bowl, I mean, let's be real. Nothing. This obviously right now is the greatest era of Philadelphia sports, Philadelphia Eagles sports. But many of us, especially Mike, you and I generation, and Shawn will be
Absolutely.
on in a few minutes. I mean, we grew up with Buddy Ryan, and that's what made us fall in love with football. Like I can remember being an 8-year-old boy. My uncle takes me to Vet Stadium, and here I'm walking up. Remember, you guys remember? Obviously, you guys remember like going up the concrete, and you're going all the way up. We're going up to 700 level, and next thing I'm seeing guys. I'm seeing some sights up there. You're seeing fisticuffs and guys peeing in sinks and all kinds of stuff.
Big time.
And fell in love with the Eagles. So, but anyway, we're gonna get into the Buddy Ryan era, and so many things about Buddy. Like great defensive mind. Great defensive mind, great eye for talent. I mean, look at him. I mean, he finds Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons in like the 9th and the 10th round. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, particularly Angelo, like Buddy's impact on like this area and possibly helping build sports radio. Like how do you think Buddy impacted your career?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. I nowadays I do a lot of appearances on shows that begin with the word old. So old is perfect for me. He had a profound impact on all of us. His timing couldn't have been better. I got to see him at the very end of his tenure in Chicago. I covered the Super Bowl that year in New Orleans when the Bears won, and I saw the players hoist Buddy up, which was no small feat. He's a big guy, and he was as big a hero in the coaching staff as Mike Ditka, the head coach. And then all the rumors started that Norman Brayman, the owner of the Eagles back then, were going to go and get Buddy Ryan because he was kind of the flavor of the month. He had so much attention for that Super Bowl. And sure enough, Buddy comes in. And this was prior to sports talk radio. This was a couple of years before we got started in that. And from day one, Buddy made a connection with the fan base like no one who has ever been a coach or a manager in our city. He just spoke the language of the fans. Real plain, real boastful, real strong. Yeah, the stuff he said was potent. He just said what those fans wanted to hear. And it worked great in the years I covered him because I didn't have to come up with story ideas. Buddy would do all that for me. He would come out after a game or after practice. He would rip somebody. He would say something, and we would be able to cover it that way. And then toward the very end, the last couple of years that he was the coach of the Eagles, we were working at WIP at the very beginning of the sports format. And again, it couldn't have been easy. Every day, Buddy, he was in some sort of a practice. That's what you hope for. And he raised the level of interest in the Eagles way beyond where it had been before, way beyond. And he got people more interested in everything about them. And the media coverage, it was ideal to be. I mean, there were a couple of years there where I was covered the Eagles for the Philadelphia Inquirer, where more people were reading what I wrote than anything else in the newspaper. And those were the heydays of that newspaper because everybody wanted to know what Buddy was going to do next. So I kind of have a debt to Buddy, the late, great Buddy, because he gave me a chance to really dig into my career here in Philadelphia. It was a crazy experience covering him.
That's awesome.
And Angelo, going back to, Brayman saved, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Norman Brayman, right, the only good thing he did was save the Eagles from moving to Arizona back in 1985. hired Buddy in '86. Can you touch on the relationship between Buddy Ryan and Norman Braman? I know Buddy referred to him as the guy in the south of France, which I don't think Braman liked too much.
You got to understand that Norman Braman. Look, I had tons of problems with Buddy in my year. But Norman Braman was just an awful sports owner. All right. He was, I mean, not that they didn't have good teams then. They had some good teams when Norman Braman was the owner. But he literally forced the players to buy their own socks that they were using in practice. This guy was so cheap. He let Reggie White walk away when the world knew that Reggie White was the backbone of those teams. I mean, and so it was inevitable that his relationship with Buddy would be back because Buddy was a straight talker, honest to a fault, and suffered no fools. Braman was a car salesman. Every third word was not to be believed. He was not honest with anyone ever. Yeah. And he was just talk about a guy that didn't fit Philadelphia. That was Braman. And it didn't take very long once Buddy and Braman were together that people sided with Buddy. And Braman became such an outcast. Inevitably, he realized he had to get rid of the team.
Yeah, it's such a shame because, like you said, Buddy Ryan was such a great defensive mind. And, looking back at that era, like, you guys touched on Norman Braman and, it just makes me upset because I just wish that Buddy had spent a little bit more time on the offense. And I kind of wonder, would things have been different if Jeff Lurie had owned the team back then?
I don't think they would have been different, except that Buddy probably wouldn't have lasted 5 years.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing about Lurie, and you see it even now that he's won a couple of Super Bowls. Lurie does not surround himself with people that tell him he's wrong, ever. You understand? He's a billionaire who is just completely surrounded by sycophants who just tell him yes, yes, yes. That's why whenever anybody pushes back in the media or anything, which they really do now, coils. What? This isn't my world. I'm a billionaire. No one can say that to me. So I don't think it would have worked with him and Buddy. But what he probably doesn't even know today, Joe, is that he owns a $5 billion team now because Buddy Ryan took it when it was worth $100 million.
Yeah.
And increased the interest in Philadelphia in the Eagles. People don't remember this. Mid-1980s, 83, 84, 85, 86. Eagles were not selling out every day.
No.
You would get to Thursday or Friday, and we'd have to wait to see if whatever station, the network, but the local station would buy the remaining seats so the game wouldn't be blacked out. The minute Buddy got here, to today, that has never been an issue. Every seat has been sold from 86 on. That was Buddy. Buddy got those people so riled up. I can remember his first training camp at Westchester University. Grabs the microphone. He's on. There's 8,000 people there to watch a practice. And he grabs a microphone and he announces to everybody that he's going to kick all the NFC East opponents. We're going 8-0 in the division. But it's like, they didn't even win a game in the division last year. How you going? And he didn't, by the way. I think he won 2 the first year. They didn't care. I was trying as a journalist to hold him accountable for what he said. The fans didn't care. They loved that he talked that way. And that's how he connected with them. And no one ever did it like that. No one ever did it like that. They all come in, and none of them ever looked into just how Buddy Ryan made that connection without ever winning a playoff game in 5 seasons. Never won a playoff game. And all these years later, we're still talking about it.
Yes. Speaking of that, how about the Fog Bowl? I mean, everybody remembers the team. Remember, he goes into Chicago blasting the horns on the bus.
Right. Well, you understand part of that was, obviously he was playing a psychological game, But part of it was going back to Chicago and reminding Chicago what they lost when he left. You know, that in your face thing. Chicago responded well to that too. That's why he was such a hero there when they won the Super Bowl. And he wanted to make sure that Chicago remembered that Buddy Ryan was a big part of their success. And he did it for that reason. He did it to get in the heads of the opponents. And of course, the fog came along and screwed everything up. They would have won. I'm convinced that year they would have gone a lot further. They would have won a playoff game under Buddy Ryan. It's just more than you could say for all the other years.
At least 2 or 3 touchdowns were dropped. I know Keith Jackson dropped one in the end zone.
Yeah.
You know, it's just weird how NFL Network did the timeline on about the Fog Bowl, just how it was like a clear sunny day, and then all of a sudden off Lake Michigan, the fog just rolled into Soldier Field.
Right.
And the game should have been stopped, and there was just a lot of controversy over that whole bit.
Guys, I got to just mention, I'm looking at this very good question under the board here. Do you think Buddy Ryan could win a Super Bowl if he was head coach today? With this team, it would have been easier. Buddy Ryan's a better head coach, even though he ignored the offense, than Nick Sirianni will ever be. You understand?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He's a leader. Nick Sirianni is the yes man for the organization.
Yes.
Buddy Ryan was the exact opposite. All right.
Yeah.
Buddy Ryan absolutely would win multiple championships with the roster the Eagles had last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat Bernard said Mike Reichenbach told him he drove around Soldier Field blowing the horn just to play mind games.
Yeah, well, I was part of it. But nothing Buddy did was spontaneous. You got to understand that. He planned all. He knew what to do to gain a psychological advantage, and that's what he did.
Yeah, well, how about when he put? I mean, who the heck puts a bounty on a kicker? I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah,
but that was Buddy though, man.
Buddy put bounties on more than just kickers. Buddy, the whole story of that hasn't come out. Although my good friend Gary Cobb often would give us little snippets of the kind of things Buddy did. Buddy, the thing about Buddy was it was just all about physicality. It was about punishing the opponent, not just beating them, but psychologically taking their will away from them. And that's what Philadelphia loves. And a lot of what Buddy did back then, of course, would be flagged for penalties for roughing and all that. A lot of what he advocated back then is no longer legal. But Buddy Ryan, it was the perfect fit.
I think Andre Waters would have been the poster child for suspensions and all this other stuff, just like you said, Angelo, with how the game's played back then till now.
Well, Buddy Ryan loved Andre Waters.
Yeah.
Because Andre Waters cared about nothing but hitting the opponent as hard as he could, right? And there were times where early in games, some of it's theoretical, but early in games, it was believed, and I always believed it, that Buddy would say to Andre, take a cheap shot. Don't worry about the flag. I want to send a message. And he did. You watch some of those games. Early in the game, he'd come flying out. The guy, helmet to helmet. He didn't know it.
Look at the body. Look at the body bag game. The body bag game against Washington.
Exactly. That was Buddy's signature game. Because people were truly they were afraid of the Eagles. You had to come into Veteran Stadium in with that surface, with all the craters in it, and face a vicious team that wasn't just trying to beat you, it was physically hurt you. And that's, he'll always be a hero in this town. And he never won a freaking playoff game. Who else can say that?
It's so funny you said that, because that 19 everybody talks about that body bag game, and of course we all love that game, right? But that season was such a microcosm of Buddy Ryan. Okay, so you have the bluster of the body bag game, and everybody loves it. Fast forward like a month and a half or so, Washington comes here to the vet. Everybody and their mom here thinks the Eagles are going to beat Washington, and Randall does absolutely nothing. He gets benched, and here Washington beats us. They stymie our offense, and Buddy Ryan's career is over here.
But see, that was the thing, though. The reason Buddy wasn't successful here, the reason Buddy was not successful as a head coach anywhere, is that he did not pay nearly enough attention to the other side of the ball. He had a phenomenal defense.
True.
But Randall wasn't even – Doug Scoville was the quarterback's coach when Randall Cunningham was here with Buddy. Mm-hmm. And Doug really took him under his wing. And Doug kind of became the offensive coordinator, even though other people had the title. Ted Plum had the title. But what ultimately happened was Randall needed way more coaching than he got. And he needed better receivers than they gave him. And he needed a much better line than they had. One year, 94 sacks, I think. They never, if Buddy had paid half as much attention and did it the same way he did the defense to the other side, to the offense, they might have had dynasty because the defense was good enough to win for years. God, to this day, you talk to the guys from those Eagles defenses, and they'll tell you that was the most fun they ever had playing football.
Yeah. And it was a brotherhood. They all hung out together. They bonded.
I contend to this day. It's ironic because this was after Buddy, but if Bryce Pop doesn't tear Randall's ACL in '91, that team wins the Super Bowl, and then the following year, obviously it was tragic. Jerome Brown passed. I think those 2 years were their 2-year out opportunity. I think one of those 2 years they would have won the Super Bowl.
I guess, but Buddy, if I'm not mistaken, was gone by then.
Yeah, no, he was gone. Yeah, he was gone. Yeah,
wasn't going to win the Pop Warner League. All right.
Yeah, that's true.
Was a blithering idiot. All right. I could say this to you as someone who got to interview him many times, who got to know him a little bit. There's never been a dumber coach or manager in Philly I ever met. The guy didn't know what the hell he was doing. He didn't. And he had a really annoying personality about it. It was just, I'm not a Sirianni fan. I'm not a Rob Thompson fan. All the but the ultimate to me was Kotek.
Kotek.
Richie Kotek.
Richie the K.
Man.
Yeah. And inheriting Buddy Ryan's defense that he built.
Yeah. Exactly. But it was, it's fun to think about. To this day, people will tell you their favorite Eagles coach ever was Buddy Ryan.
Yeah.
To this day.
What he brought, like you said, to the defense, to the game. And, it sticks out for me as a kid because that's what made me love football. The way Reggie White played. I mean, one of the best defensive ends, if not the best. Just the way he played the game on and off the field to me.
Right. Well, I was in with the team every day covering the team back when Buddy started. And I covered him like a journalist and I held up the promises that he made. And I really alienated him in the course of the year that I covered him to the point that the latter part of the season, he would not acknowledge my questions in a press conference setting. He gave me the stink eye at every opportunity. And for many years, even after that, I was an amazingly harsh critic of him because he had never won and because he was kind of a jerk about it, et cetera, et cetera. And then, I don't know, like 10, 12 years into my radio career, I started to realize that all these people cared about the Eagles because of what Buddy had done. And I started to appreciate more and more. And then Buddy was on a tour or something, and we invited him onto the show. I did not think he would come because I know he hated me. But we came and we had this great conversation about what it meant to him to be a coach in Philadelphia and how much he loved the city and how much the city embraced him and his family. And we ended up on great terms. You know, he had come on a few more times after that. And yeah, I ended up getting nominated for a Pulitzer the year that I covered him, the first year he was here.
Okay.
And in my book, I acknowledged that the worst thing that could have happened to me was to win, because Buddy was right, I was wrong. Right? But Buddy was doing something that he knew could not be held to journalism. We're going to win every game in the division. No, you're not. Yeah. We're going to drown these people. No, you lost by 14 points, whatever, right? So I held him all that, and I realized, no, what he did was build an interest in the Eagles that no one else could do. And we have all profited. He has now passed. He is gone. But to this day, I have a debt to him that he made football, sports radio, and the Eagles so important in this city. So I feel like it took me a long time to get there, but I finally realized that that Buddy had a great impact on all of us, and it was a positive one.
Yeah. How much, you know, you brought up his impact, like how big of a turning point do you think that fake spike was in '87? You know, because if you remember, you know, we all remember that, you know, that Eagles team was on the rise, right? They were on the rise, but then all their starters missed, you know, what did they miss? 3 games, and Tom Landry plays all his starters, and then Buddy. I mean, I remember being a little kid just like absolutely going crazy, you know, because Buddy just shoved it up as you know what, you know what I mean?
No, that had a bigger impact than the body bags.
Yeah.
That was taking, and back then the hatred for the Cowboys was way worse than it is now.
Oh,
the Cowboys had a run going, then they were really good. And to rub it in their face the way that they did, right?
The scabs.
Oh, I can remember coming in the next day on the radio. Oh my God. If he ran for mayor, he would have won that day. Or president. Everyone loved him. Oh, did you see Tom Landry? Oh, his hat was twirling around. And it was that was the signature moment of his 5 years here, because he said, "Screw you to the Cowboys."
Right.
People. That was it. Some people, you know, he was a fan. They were a fan for life the minute he did that.
And plus, Buddy would never shake hands with any of the opposing coaches after the game. He would just run right to the locker room.
He wasn't a fake. See, that's the thing. A lot of these guys shake hands. Yeah, I think Belichick wanted to shake hands with Doug Pusey with the no, but they do it. Buddy said, "I ain't going to be a fake. I'm going to do it my way. If you don't like it, too bad." And you know, you got to respect that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Hey, we all know he wasn't a fan of Kevin Gilbride, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he wasn't a young guy when he went after Gilbride either, Joe. And I'm not sure he would have won that fight, but we'll never know. You know, people got in his way, but he was ready to crush that guy.
Yeah.
You ever see that before? I haven't.
Nah, never. Especially on the sideline in a playoff game.
Right.
The sucker.
Well, that's why I thought this, you know, like I thought this story for the old school was like so interesting, because like, look at all of us, you know, I mean, and we're going back, what, like 30 some years, and the guy still brings a smile to everybody's face, you know, like he never, you know, we could all debate, like, you know, was he the greatest head coach? Like you said, Ange, no, he wasn't, you know what I mean? But he brought a lot of good times and a lot of good memories. And this guy right here, Billy McDougal, first off, thanks for checking us out. And he said his dad used to drink with Buddy, and he says he always said Buddy would give everything he had in order to win and dominate the opponent. And that's true.
But it's, if you're starting a series on old school, you can't start at a better place than Buddy, because he was old school in every way, in the way he acted.
Yeah.
And he had the kind of impact on our city that no other coach who never won anything had. He had more impact than coaches that did win. So, yeah, I think it's the perfect place to start. And it not only shows what we love in the sports figures in Philadelphia, we love guys like that. Got blue collar, fisted kind of guys.
Put it right in your face, then give a crap.
Physical stuff, right?
Buddy,
And Buddy was perfect for that.
Buddy's the perfect example of a Philly sports fan. Tell it like it is. No BS. Right in your face, like you said, Shawn.
Absolutely. And I remember when he passed, I was still doing a show then, and it was like the Pope.
Yeah.
Pope in the world, Buddy was the Pope in Philadelphia. People were so upset and nostalgic, and he had a place in their heart that not very many sports figures can keep forever, and he did it. He did it.
True.
Yeah, and I know, like we look at your favorite coach, Andy Reid. If you look at the numbers, Andy Reid just being, I mean, he obviously won a lot more than Buddy Ryan, but if you look at the impact, like Billy McDougal says right here, the impact that Buddy had as opposed to the impact that Andy had.
Well, I hate Andy Reid. I always hated Andy Reid. And I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you on the numbers, Joe, because here's my numbers.
Okay.
And Buddy Ryan had 5 shots at winning the championship. He got 0. All right. Andy Reid in our city had 14 shots.
That's true.
True. 0, all right. No, yeah, he won playoff games. He did all that stuff. Andy Reid, Buddy Ryan in one day said more honest things than Andy Reid said in 14 years.
Wow.
Andy Reid didn't give a damn about the fans or the city or anything. Andy Reid would say whatever he thought played the best in his locker room. And that is, to me, disrespectful to fans. There's a way. Doug Peterson showed it. You can be honest and still not alienate everybody. I got nothing but contempt. Let me tell you something. If you're giving me a Mount Rushmore of Eagles coaches, Reid ain't on it. I'll tell you that. Buddy is. Buddy would be on it. Andy Reid, he'd be a little bolder on the bottom, underneath the mountain. That's why I put him.
Well, Reid's press conferences would be the same thing. It starts with me. I got to do a better job. I got to put my players in better position. It starts with me. Time's yours. Please. That's 5 famous lines Andy Reid would say every week in and week out, like you said, for 14 years.
You trying to get me to leave, Mike? If you're trying to get me to leave, I don't want to come on here to talk about that jackass.
No, but it was the same damn thing every week, every year.
No, please don't get me started.
What the flip? Like how did he keep a job?
On another note, do you think it'll be anytime soon Seth Joyner gets into the Hall? Or what are your thoughts on that? Since Eric Allen finally got in.
Seth Joyner, he would be a great guy on Buddy Ryan because he loves him. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I believe he played with him again in Phoenix. I think he played with him a couple times. Yeah, you know what? I loved, to this day, all these years later, a generation since he played, Seth Joyner still has the Buddy attitude.
Yes, yeah, like it is, and I love it.
I would work with him every week on a Monday after the Eagles game, and I'd always be going, make sure I don't say anything here that gets him annoyed, right? So I would rip Andy Reid, and that would be fine. He didn't care about that. But if I ever said an inappropriate thing about it, Buddy Ryan, I better get some security up here to protect me. Because he's coming in. No, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. Absolutely a Hall of Famer. And there are a lot of guys on that defense for Hall of Fame caliber when Buddy was coaching them. Yeah. Not so much when Buddy wasn't. But when he was, he knew how to get the most out of every one of those players.
Angelo, I want to touch on something. Was there friction between Wes Hopkins and Buddy Ryan? Because I remember when he drafted Ben Smith, he basically benched.
But he didn't love Wes. That was one of the great mysteries of that era, because Wes Hopkins was his kind of player.
Yeah,
Hopkins was tough. Wes Hopkins hit hard.
Yeah,
from day one, Mike. He kind of shrugged his. I guess he thought there was one thing about Buddy that he didn't like. He didn't like players who were smart, right? Like, God rest his soul. Andre Waters, right,
Mm-hmm.
was a great football player, but he was not a member of Mensa. You know what I'm saying? But from the day that your buddy got there, and I was already covering the team, he couldn't stand Jaworski. He couldn't stand Spagnola. Spagnola went to an Ivy League school. And he didn't like Wes. And we all puzzled about what that was. And my best guess on it, because Wes was his kind of player, is that Wes was too smart for Buddy Ryan. If Buddy Ryan asked Wes to do something that Wes thought was stupid, Wes wouldn't do it.
Wow.
And if you weren't blindly following Buddy, you immediately became an enemy of him. That's my guess. It's a guess. Because we thought when Buddy got there, we went, well, the one guy we know he'll love is Wes Hopkins. He plays, he was the best safety in football back then. But he didn't. And he didn't from the beginning.
Yeah, because I remember Wes got hurt. I think he tore his knee up, and then Buddy went out and got Terry Hogue. And Terry Hogue was like a smart player, but he wasn't near the player Wes Hopkins was.
No.
Part of being a smart player is making Buddy think you're stupid. So Terry probably didn't push back at all and just did what he was told and never questioned it. I think questioning Buddy would always get you in trouble because Buddy wanted to do it his way. That was it.
Well, when Buddy was first hired in '85, I mean, some people may not remember Ray Ellis, who was a Pro Bowl corner. He ended up having Ray Ellis traded to Cleveland. Do you know what was behind that? Or
absolutely.
Just Buddy got it?
Ellis played off his the receiver. Ellis gave you 5 yards. Ellis does now what most teams do. He did not play up. He wasn't smacking the guy at the line. He was more of a finesse cornerback. And Buddy, if you had finesse in your game, you weren't going to be able to survive with Buddy. Buddy didn't want finesse.
Yeah, he wanted you to knock him off.
Yeah, Buddy didn't want anybody who ran a 4-2 or did it elegantly. He wanted guys with snot coming out, mud on their. He wanted a guy who was down and dirty, and that wasn't Ellis. So he was done. Buddy weeded those guys out real fast.
Yeah,
real fast. He first couple of practices in Westchester was hot.
Yeah,
boy, he had them out there 2-a-days with the stuff.
Yeah, they were the worst.
There were 13 people after the first full pad practice. 13 ended up in the hospital. Wow. And I could tell you right now, if you looked at who those 13 were, I don't remember. Probably 9 or 10 of them were gone before the first game. He weeded them out. If he thought you weren't tough enough, you were.
You remember Ernest Jackson, I think, rushed for like 1,000 yards, and then he cut him immediately.
Hated him. Wasn't that amazing? He had a 1,000-yard season, got caught immediately.
Yeah.
But again, Buddy, he knew what he wanted, and that's what he was going to get. And that's why, Byers was perfect for him. Because Byers was a bruising, hard-running guy. Just he couldn't stay on the
block.
Yeah, and he blocked. You better block if you're on Buddy's team. You don't block, you don't play.
It's Pepper Johnson.
Yeah.
His best
you guys have a memory that's way better than mine. My God.
Angelo, can you touch on the Chris Carter situation when Buddy caught him?
Yeah, that was Buddy acknowledged eventually that it was because Carter was having a real problem with drugs.
Yeah.
And Carter eventually acknowledged his drug past. But it was devastating when it happened because Buddy had the quote about Chris Carter, all he does is catch touchdowns. Carter was a hell of a money player.
Big time.
But it got to the point where he couldn't function because he had a drug problem. And Buddy didn't tolerate that. But Buddy wasn't the kind of guy that was going to find a kind, soft solution. It was much easier for Buddy. Buddy looked at players as, for the most part, interchangeable parts. Somebody who doesn't have one. Now, he didn't always do that, and he didn't get anybody who could catch the ball the way Carter could. But he wasn't going to keep a guy like that on the team.
Yeah, to me, I mean, yeah, and you know, I mean, I think Chris Carter credits him for saving his life.
He does.
That's what he did. I just was going to say that. Yeah, absolutely.
He does. And Chris Carter, that's the thing about Buddy's players, you know, even when he was mean to them, you go back and talk to them 10 years later or 20 years later, and they'll tell you he was their favorite coach. It was weird. You know, he was like a drill sergeant, but somewhere along the way, you so craved his approval that you started to really like him, you know, and then he would give you like a glance or smile, and it meant more than if, you know, some motor mouth like Sirianni just kept blabbering about how great you were. No, you didn't need that with Buddy. A couple of words, and you went, wow.
It's like he brought the best out of you when you were like on empty, and you just that drive to not only prove it to yourself but prove it to him. And he was like that father figure coach.
He was great at that, and that's a big part of being a good coach.
Yeah,
just you know, the sad part of the story is that if he had ever won a championship here, honestly, he'd be the biggest hero in the history of Philadelphia sports.
Yeah,
he just
true.
There's one big footnote to his story is he never won, not here, not as a head coach, and that'll always be something that go, man, that would have been something.
Yeah, it would have been.
That would have been crazy. Yeah, just one last quick question here. My man Dave Yornell says, "Hey, Ange, just a quick question. Between Randall, Donovan, and Hurts, who was your favorite quarterback out of the three?"
No brainer. Hurts. Hurts is you understand? Hurts plays within the system. He's tough. He tells the truth. Randall was an incredible talent, but really strange, very enigmatic. And Donovan, frankly, he would be third on my list with almost any other quarterbacks. I just didn't like Donovan. Donovan was a phony, right? You didn't need to see a lot of that to know he was a phony. Was he a terrific quarterback? Yeah. Does he have most of the Eagles' quarterback records? Yes. Did he ever win a championship? No.
Nope.
If he had 10 more tries, would he have won a championship? No, he wouldn't have. You see what happened when Andy Reid went to Kansas City and actually had a quarterback that could make decisions on the field himself.
Yeah.
Much better Andy suddenly looked. Because Andy couldn't manage the clock. He doesn't have to in KC. Mahomes does it. Donovan didn't know how to do it. Donovan didn't know the rules on overtime.
I remember that.
Bengals game, 2008.
Somebody should investigate. I can't believe he actually graduated from Syracuse. Now, I never had any use for Donovan, but Hurts, I have loved him from day one. And Randall was the best show at quarterback I've ever seen. He was incredible. The talent, the running ability, he could throw the ball 75 or 80 yards.
Also, he could
the punting ability as well.
90.
He had it all. He really did. But he had it all but a coach. Nobody coached. And that's why he didn't win.
Buddy would say, Randall, go out and make 5 big plays.
Yes. And Randall would make 3 and they'd lose by a touchdown.
I know. Yeah, right.
Randall was we'll never know how great he could have been with better coaching.
Yeah, it's a shame because he was great that year in Minnesota, but at that point, he was kind of older and he didn't have quite the mobility. But look how good he was that year.
He was some kind of a talent. Wow, is he great? Not a brilliant mind, but a brilliant body. Tremendous skill, and with the right guy making the decisions for him and giving him the right plays, he could have really been something.
Yeah, and he would have been great. Like he would have been perfect for today's game.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. See, Buddy didn't. Man, if he were on defense, he would have been great because Buddy would have coached him up on defense. Yeah. But offense, kid, go do it. That's not my side of the ball. It's a shame.
Yeah. Well, listen, Ange, I thank you so much for hopping on with us. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And,
great thing, guys. I enjoyed doing it. Good. I hope you have great success with Old School. It sounds like a fun thing.
Greatly
Thanks,
appreciated once again.
Thank you.
Take
All
care.
right, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Take
See
care.
ya. Yeah, that was a great
Great.
time. I love those old stories, man.
I really wanted to ask them before we went. I should have put it in the chat. Any of these defensive players on our defense now, do they have any similarities to your Clyde Simmons,
Jalen
Andy
Clark.
Harm? To me, I said it to Joey, and I think I'm going to stick by Ty Williams or Ty Robinson is Andy Harmon.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know. Yeah, I let's hope, because I mean, Andy Harmon was a hell of a player. You know,
I'm sticking to
Underrated.
it, you know.
He
But
was underrated, I think, Andy
Yeah.
Harmon.
this kid's underrated, you know, first round, why, this and that, but, you know.
Oh, I think Jalen Carter's a modern day Jerome Brown, closest thing to it, and Seth Joyner.
Yeah, and I even said that to Farzy on his show. I mean, it's amazing, dude. But like you said, Buddy Ryan, you know, I mean, that's what made me love football. Gangrene D,
Same here.
you know, punch in your
Buddy.
mouth,
Buddy just brought that in your face attitude.
and he didn't
No.
give a shit.
Right.
And he just like you said about Andre Waters, and just the way Reggie White played the game, and Joey could tell you. I mean, I loved his game. I even modeled my game when I played, but he's just amazing the way he approached the game, the way he played. Ask Phil Simms. Phil Simms will tell you.
Okay.
But yeah,
how many games did Reggie hit Phil Simms
and tap him
fall
on
on
the
him
ass
and then hurt his ribs? You know, and he'd be like me. Reggie do one of those jaunts. He'd be like, "May the good Lord be with you." You know what I mean?
He would sack him, Joey. And remember, I think I told you he would smack him on the ass and be like, "Good throw."
Yeah.
It's getting annihilated.
Well, that's the thing Phil Simms said when him and Jerome were beating him up one game. Jerome patted him on the ass and said, "Hang in there now, hang in."
Yeah. Dude, it just like Joey said, if Jerome didn't speed that day, I think we're talking about a different thing. Like, really. Because that defense, like we said, was special.
Big time.
And just like with Seth Joyner, he's the coach that I would love to see the Eagles have, but it ain't happening because he tells it like it is. You don't like it, oh, well. And even on his podcast, I just love it. He breaks it down because he's played the game, knows the game, unlike some of these yo-yos, you know?
Yeah.
Different era, different times. I mean,
yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, hey, story after story, and you know, we got another guy with some Buddy Ryan stories, I'm sure, that's nice enough to hop on with us. Our man Marc Farzetta. Hey, Marc, how you doing, man?
Farzy.
What's up, Mark?
What's going on?
I hope you can hear me, fellas. For whatever reason, I'm not hearing you guys.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're having technical stuff, but yeah, but you know, one thing we didn't get to with the end, you know, we were talking about how Buddy didn't win this, you know, obviously ultimately couldn't win.
Okay.
Part of that reason was part of that reason was you know, the fact look how good the league was back then. You know, you had Washington, you had the Giants, you had 49ers. Like, you know, it was really tough to win back then.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Marc?
I got you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Through the magic of the internet. Look at us. Look at us. Just talking Buddy Ryan. Just amazing. I told Fuji I got a daughter's softball game today. That got changed to a magic show because, you know, that's my life now. And yeah, so I'm coming to you live from my car. I maybe I'll give you guys a tour of the car just so you guys can see the many bits of pirate booty, goldfish, half-finished children's yogurt smoothies that are just crusted on my back seat. Hopefully you can't see any of that, but I'd be happy to give the tour. But you know what? My car, gentlemen, this is where I come in as a professional. My car, gentlemen, is a lot like Buddy Ryan. Gritty, okay? Unapologetic and gritty.
Not Flyers gritty, right? Just
not Flyer. I will say there's nothing orange in my car.
right.
Fortunately.
No
yeah.
Cheetos or nothing like that.
No, actually, no, wait, hold on. Goldfish are orange. There's a ton of orange in my car. Never mind.
Love it.
It's funny. Your car sounds like my car. Every time I get I'll get the car nice and clean, and next thing you know, I get my son in it, and there's just stuff all over the place. You know what I mean? So I get it.
Yeah, I'll just like reach for a handful of snacks, like, and I don't mean like fresh snacks out of a bag. I mean snacks that have been in
It
there.
was the way to go, right?
Yeah. My wife always argues floor snacks, like, oh, floor snacks, and I'm like, why are you saying that? Like your family is a pack of barbarians, and my family is a civilized ancient Rome. That's the way I like to think of it.
Yeah. So Mark, I know you're a couple years, you're a little bit younger than us, but what do you have any what's your recollection of the Buddy Ryan era? Do you have certain games you remember, or certain experiences, or anything like that?
I got a book when I was a kid. Just my parents knew how into sports I was, and it wasn't just like the typical, like Dr. J's awesome. I caught the tail end of that as a child. Charles Barkley's amazing. It was like I just really I always loved history, and I love combining the history of sport. I love combining history and then my love of sports. So I was like, when Buddy Ryan was hired by the Eagles, I was 3 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things that I went back. Like the 70s Flyers, I was always really curious about, which preceded me. The Buddy Ryan era was definitely up there because he had been talked about so much. And I always was told how much Andy Reid wasn't Buddy Ryan, and if Andy Reid had a little bit of Buddy Ryan in him. And then I would go back and look at stuff when I was a kid and be like, hold on, we're comparing, I'm in high school at this point, and I'm like, we're comparing a guy who never won in the playoffs here in Philly to Andy Reid. Like, what's the story here? And I remember really doing a deep dive into Buddy Ryan's legacy in Philadelphia, talking to my dad about it, older relatives, older friends of the family and everything. And he just, you really ingrain yourself in in a city when people feel like you're doing exactly what they would do. And that's what Buddy Ryan was. And, despite the, not having success in the postseason, Buddy Ball was the real thing. And then getting to work with a guy like Seth Joyner and hearing all the stories from him, hearing all the interviews from players that played for him. And one of my favorite stories, I don't know if Seth has told you guys this before, but one of my favorite stories, and maybe Seth can tell you about this one day, but one of my favorite stories is that Buddy Ryan understood he was in on the joke. Like he understood that he's got to say certain things in the media that don't necessarily mesh with how he is as a head coach. Yeah. And like he would tell Seth Joyner during a contract dispute or whatever, hey, you go home and you do your thing and you take care of your business, you take care of your family, but just know if they ask me about this, that I got to call you out of the carpet for it. I got to break some stones here. I got to act like I'm a tough head coach. And Seth's like, I appreciate the conversation, blah, blah, blah. So then Seth's home during this contract dispute and he's watching the news, and Buddy Ryan, and today Buddy Ryan was asked about Seth Joyner not being at whatever. And it's just Buddy Ryan being like, well, 59 needs to get his ass in camp, and he needs to understand how important this is, and what this means to the rest of the team, and he's the team leader. And Seth's just watching this stuff laughing. So I remember when Andy Reid came back for the first time and coached against Chip Kelly. And I remember writing an article when I was at WIP, and I remember writing an article when they were really pushing us to write articles for CBSPhilly.com. And I remember writing an article about how Andy Reid was respected but not loved. And the coaches that were loved were the guys that fans could really identify with. And like Dick Vermeil was a guy that people could identify with as a passionate person, but not in the same way that typical Philadelphia is. Yeah. Buddy Ryan was that guy. And again, this is all just from going back and talking to people that lived through it and coming away with my own takeaway from all of it. But Buddy Ryan just played the game and coached the game the way we wanted it as a city. And Philadelphia has not changed. Like, hey, look, this is a 2-time Super Bowl winning championship. This isn't the city I grew up anymore, where we're begging for one championship. Where we're seeing the '93 Phillies fail, the Flyers fail in the '80s, the Sixers fail in '01. This is a totally different city now.
Right.
And Buddy Ryan just knew how to identify with this city, and he knew how to beat Dallas, obviously. And going back to the comparison, I look at a guy like Andy Reid, and he was respected, but he wasn't loved. Buddy Ryan was respected and loved in this city, and that's why he will always be that legend that even for people younger than me will go back and look at, because his legacy lives on in Philadelphia. His legend lives on in Philadelphia, and some of the most respected names in all of Philadelphia sports still talk about Buddy Ryan as if he is that father figure, that great uncle, whatever he might be. So he was one of the first people that I really went back on as far as being a child, like literally a little kid when he was here in Philly, and just really enjoyed learning so much about him.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned. I mean, you know, because of course we're technically in the glory days of the Eagles now, obviously, and it's funny you were talking about like winning one championship, like so. I had to catch myself because I felt like that little kid in Boston, because Shawn and I were Shawn and I were down at the parade, and we were at the art museum. And I go to Shawn, I'm like, next time we win, we're going to go to Broad Street. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like all those years, we just wanted one, you know what I mean?
Now you got two.
I know it's just crazy. So hopefully we get another
little kids table anymore, you know? I mean,
yeah, we're at the big boy table.
Yeah.
We got a comment here. Mike Papernick Jr. says, I was 17 years old when Buddy got hired. I remember how bad Marion Campbell was a head coach after Dick Vermeil.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the Swab Fox just, you know, the team was bad, you know, Brandon brought Buddy in. And, you know, Buddy having a swag with the 46 defense with the 85 Panthers was just, you know,
that defense front for the Eagles, like you said, Fuge, and we all said it. Clyde Simmons, Pitts,
Golick,
Byron Evans, Brett Hager,
Wes Hopkins,
Izell Toast Jenkins, Andre Waters. I mean, it gets no better. But just like we all said, Buddy Ryan just is that guy that made you love the game because he was no nonsense, and he just brought out the best in his players, whether mainly on defense, but also on offense, but not as much.
Oh, one of the best defenses to ever never won a Super Bowl, you know, hands down. Yeah. I mean, 1991, they had all those records.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on here, guys. Let me see if Mark's back. If Mark's got his thing back.
We in business. We in business, fellas.
Yes, we are.
I just want to say this is all on my end. Sully Squad and everybody do a bang up job. This is on me, 100% on me.
All good,
I take full responsibility. I take full responsibility in not putting my Wi-Fi in a better position to have success.
You get a pay, and it's all good.
Maurice Wright made a comment about guys.
Let me say, Maurice Wright says, you know, getting back to, you know, he says he thinks the Eagles have what it takes to be a championship contender for a few years. Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. And then I'm not sure. Did anybody ever find this out? Did anybody ever say what the reason was that they put the bounty on Luis and Dejas? I don't remember ever hearing about that.
I think it was. Well, I remember. You know, I'm a couple years older than you guys. The whole thing with the Eagles caught Luis and Dejas and picked up Roger Ruzek, which was the kicker for the Cowboys at the time. You know, basically they swapped Luis and Dejas was with Dallas, and then the Eagles picked up Roger Ruzek after that.
Yeah.
And remember, the bounty, the rumor was that Jesse Small hit him on the opening kickoff, and that's what Buddy put out there. I don't know if you may know a little bit more, Mark.
I remember Luis and Dejas, from what I understand, was very critical of the Eagles and Buddy Ryan, and basically, you want to go type of thing. Mm-hmm. So he had, I forget specifically what he said, but that provoked everything, and everyone was just like, all right, well, there's a bounty on his head, and that was that. And yeah, it was. I remember going back and watching that game. So the other thing is that all these games are on YouTube. Like you can go back and watch the Body Bag game. You can go back and watch the Bounty Bowl, all that. So that's fun to go back and watch. And you see, like, you really do see the extra edge that is in that game. And I mean, I've talked to enough players throughout my career where they all say, I don't really play for a coach, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To hell with that, man. Guys played for Buddy Ryan.
Yeah.
They play for pride. They play for money. They play for love of the game, all that stuff. But some really great coaches just know how to motivate their players. And even if they don't think they're playing for the coach, they're in their mind, the coach put the quarter in the machine and got it going. And that produces a lot of great memories. And that's three of them. You just talk about the body bag game, talk about the bounty bowl, you talk about buddy ball, all of it. That really goes back. And you also think about this. Think of how many players have such incredible talent, and then people don't tap into that talent. They don't find a way to tap into that talent.
So true.
Buddy Ryan knew how to do that with Clyde Simmons, Reggie White. Look, Reggie White, I think, would have been great anywhere, but still, you got to get that machine going, man.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny because going back to that era, like when I was doing research for this show and the article, I remembered, like, we all make fun of Izell Jenkins and call him Izell Toast Jenkins, right? Mm-hmm. But in reality, he was an 11th round pick that started at corner. I mean, if you think about it, the draft's only 7 rounds now, so he basically was an undrafted corner that started. So we all call him Toast, but in reality, he how bad. He wasn't actually that bad. He was just the weak link of that defense.
Yeah.
What was Seth? Seth was like a 9th round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It was Sam Houston. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Mark, going back then, I mean, talking to Seth and some of these other guys, I mean, besides the Bounty Bowl, I mean, you look at what was it, the 2012 Saints, the guy called with the bounties. I mean, was that a thing of the past from, like, your knowledge, just being in the business?
I mean,
I
think
the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, guys, look, they're doing. I know it's only 16 games at the time. We're talking about the Bounty Bowl, but it's still 6 months. It's still a long season to these guys. It's still practicing and going through all the routines and all that stuff. So anything that gets that machine going again, a coach is going to use. And I remember Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator of the Saints at the time, audio of him. I don't think it was video, but it was audio of him addressing the team went viral. And he was talking about cutting the head of the snake off. And I'm listening to that, and I'm going, yeah, okay. Like that sounds normal. But the minute that goes into mainstream media and people that are either casual fans or, just someone who's not into the NFL at all, and they're like, wait a minute, hold on. This is a group of players. This is their boss, essentially. And he's telling them to hit a guy in the head and take him down and cut the head off of a snake and all that. And that falls into the wrong hands. People take that out of context. That's how coaches address their team. So I have no doubt in my mind that other players or a coach might say, yeah, go ahead and do that thing. And I remember also Roger Goodell talking about a mountain of evidence that he was sitting on about the, Saints and all that stuff and how damning it was. And I'm like, is he going to release that mountain of evidence? Because I still haven't seen it. And yet there's a horrible fallout from it for the Saints. It didn't make any sense. It was when Roger Goodell was really trying to cut his teeth as the commissioner of the NFL and really trying to make a name for himself and put his fingerprints on it after Paul Tagliabue. And to answer your question, yes, I do think that happens in NFL locker rooms. I don't know if it happens as much anymore because of the Bounty Bowl and how much attention it got. But yeah, they try to find different ways to motivate these players through not a long season in terms of games played, but a long season in terms of 6 months, training camp and all that to try to get these players ready to play each and every week.
Do any of the guys from the Buddy Ryan era have a comparison with this defense that Fangio has in your eyes? Like Jalen Carter, obviously, is the Jerome Brown.
Yeah.
Anybody stick out to you that you can compare?
Right now, I do. The first guy you think of is Jalen Carter. Because in my lifetime, fellas, there's been two when I hear nobody complain or rebut a comparison, that's how you know somebody is that good. Like when Kawhi Leonard was going off against the Sixers in the postseason, whatever it was, 6 or 7 years ago, whatever, People were like, no one's played like this since Jordan. And nobody said, hey, hold your horses, that's Jordan. Everyone was like, yeah, that's pretty right. When everyone started comparing Jalen Carter to Jerome Brown, including players that played with him, Jerome Brown, and everyone's like, yeah, no, that's right. No one rebutted it. I was like, damn, all right, I guess he is that good. Like I didn't see Jerome Brown in his prime until I went back and watched him, but not in the moment experiencing it. But yeah, Jalen Carter is the first guy that absolutely steps out in that regard. Linebackers, like as much as I like Zach Bond, I don't compare him to a Seth Joyner. Nakobe Dean, I don't. He kind of stands on his own. Fangio's defense is so different than Buddy Ryan. I mean, we're talking about a 4-6 defense that was all about how do I crush the quarterback? How do I send Mike Singletary? Yeah, exactly. How do I send Mike Singletary up the middle? It's a different game. It's a much different style than what we're used to. But yeah, if there was one guy I could take, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, when he was here, you could certainly say throw him in there. I think I know Buddy Ryan would find a spot for Sidney Brown, and that's not to glorify Sidney Brown. That's just the attitude of a Sidney Brown, the heat-seeking missile mentality of a Sidney Brown. Just like that's what. Again, that's not to say that he would have been, really anybody on that defense, but there's just the overall. I don't even want to name a name so people think I'm comparing, but just in terms of the overall mentality, that's what he brought to the table. That's what he would have brought to the table under Buddy Ryan.
True.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at like this modern day NFL and like you look at all the stuff that Buddy did, with the different games and all that stuff. I mean, it's something that'll never be duplicated. You know what I mean? Like you'll never. You know what? You know what? Cooper DeJean. DeJean. I think Buddy Ryan. I mean, the nickel spot wasn't as used, but I mean, I think if Buddy Ryan would have seen Cooper DeJean put Derrick Henry on his ass, I think that would, or excuse me, on his head, more like it. Then I think that would have been like, oh, Buddy Ryan would have sat up in his chair and went, all right, I can find a spot for this kid. Yeah, you touched on how the players love Buddy Ryan. Do you think that the '87 strike played a big role in that? Because I kind of do, in the fact that Buddy really, really stuck up for those guys. So you mentioned the contract stuff. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that really brought the team together.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a coach that can identify so well with your players having not played, like that's one of the things that really blew me away about Nick Sirianni is like this locker room really loves that guy, but he wasn't a player. Like he gets the same kind of respect as Doug Peterson, and Doug Peterson was a quarterback in the league for so long. So like that's amazing, and played with some huge names. Buddy Ryan is that guy as well, where he just knows how to command a team. I forget. I'm blanking on this. I think it was his father was a military guy.
I think Buddy was a sergeant in the Army.
Buddy was a sergeant. I knew there was a military. Yeah, he had the military. Buddy himself had the military background. So in the day and age in the NFL, when you could be that drill sergeant, for lack of a better term, he understood that. I think he had a quality that a lot of great coaches have, if not all the great coaches have, where you realize that the guys you're coaching are their own individual personalities. And it's not a matter of placating to them. It's a matter of finding a way to motivate them.
Yeah.
And if players know you have their back no matter what, then they'll love you forever. Yeah. They'll love you forever. Yeah. And plus, let's not act like for a second that Buddy Ryan didn't have a lovable personality. You know what I mean? Like, one of my favorite things of all time is two things. One was talking about the line from Jimmy Johnson about I would have seen Buddy Ryan, but he got his what'd he say, fat rear end off the field too quick, blah blah blah. And Buddy Ryan's response to that was, I take a lot of offense to that. I lost, I've been on a diet. I thought I was looking pretty good. That's a perfect line. When I mean, who in Philadelphia? You tell me who in the 700 level wouldn't want to tell their rich, snooty boss that he's just some guy in France. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he did with Brayman. If that's not Philly, I don't know what is. Man.
Oh, yeah. He never called him Brayman. He called him, said the guy in the south of France.
The guy that
Man, that's what Buddy would state in his interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's classic, man.
Big time.
It does make you wonder too, like if the guy, the quote unquote guy in France, like, if he wasn't such a J.O. making people pay for socks and stuff and actually focused more on the team, maybe they would have, they could have improved the offense a little more, and they might have won.
Yeah, but if he paid for the socks, he wouldn't afford a yacht in the south of France or whatever the hell he was doing.
Yeah, that's true.
He would have re-signed Reggie White too.
Yeah, that hurt me, man. Not signing Reggie. Like, how can you sign the best defensive end?
If you guys remember, WIP did the pep rally in Love Park for Reggie White.
Yeah. It changed the game, the contracts and all that.
Well, that's what opened the door for free agency in 1993.
Yeah,
that's deep in his heart, he wanted to always stay in Philly, just like his wife said on that Football Life story. And it's just a shame that Raymond did that to him.
And Raymond and Harry Gable said they offered him a contract. And like you said,
hard to believe.
Reggie White's wife said that they never did.
No, I believe her before them.
Yeah, definitely.
And let's not forget about God. God told Reggie, you should probably go to Green Bay.
Yeah.
I know. It's funny.
Or was it right? He got his ring, God bless.
Mm-hmm.
But
you want to know something, though? You want to know something that's absolute bull? And I don't know if this is still there or not, but I remember the first time I was ever at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I walked through the hall. I walked through where all the busts are on display and all that.
Yeah.
And coming out, right on the wall, is a portrait of Reggie White making a sack on a quarterback in a Packers uniform at Lambeau Field. Now, if that wasn't a middle finger to Philadelphia enough, do you know what quarterback he's sacking?
Probably Randall.
Randall Cunningham.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And I haven't even been up there. Oh, man.
Wow. I never saw that when I went there.
Ridiculous.
Jeez, all the quarterbacks he could have sacked, and they have him sacking Randall. Gee, thanks.
That
198 sacks.
Was Randall in an Eagles uniform?
He wasn't. Yes, he wasn't. Yeah.
Well, no, he played Minnesota in the same division.
Yeah, no, he wasn't wearing his. He wasn't wearing his third string Cowboys uniform.
Oh God, I know. I know. You know what's funny? You could almost do a show on like guys guys like Randall. I think Randall wound up with the Cowboys. I think Harold Carmichael wound up with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Oh, Harold, that's my dude. I love that guy. He there's a famous story about Harold Carmichael seeing himself in the Cowboys jersey. And he was like going out on the field for like a preseason game or week 1 or whatever, and he walked by a mirror and he saw himself and he goes, "Oh God, this ain't right." And then he retired. I got to ask him about that legend of a story, and this, you might file this under "Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story," because that's the best version of the story, but not true. Apparently, he saw himself in the uniform, went out and played a couple weeks, and then decided to call it quits. But it wasn't like a instantaneous, "Oh man, I'm wearing a Dallas Star, get me the hell out of here" kind of thing. So I hate to spoil that one.
Hey, well, let's keep it real. As much as we love our sports and we love the Eagles and all, those bills still come. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Mark, I got one quick question. If you could ever ask Seth Joyner.
Sure.
Why wasn't he ever on the song "Buddy's Watching You"? Because he's not. I've had to ask him before.
I've asked him that same question. I believe his answer, if I remember correctly, he might have not even given me a reason. I think he just said he was glad he wasn't a part of it. I think he said, "I'm glad I missed that day. I'm glad I missed that day."
I'm just kind of surprised he wasn't on it because, I mean, you go Greg Garrity, like guys that Roy Nell Young,
Luis Zendejas might have even been in that one.
He was.
I think he was.
Yeah. I realized, Mike Quick wrote some of that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Really?
I believe I think specifically he wrote the line. Oh, wow. Now, okay. Randall Cunningham, quarterback. I'm the one everyone tries to sack.
Yeah.
Now you see me. Now you don't.
Oh, just got to give you that 80s flair as you bust it out. Oh.
Yeah, I would try to grow the high top, but as you can see, that'd be a problem.
That song was like so 80s. I could just picture that, and then the Eddie Murphy song.
Party all the time, baby.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Good old Rick
Inspired by
James.
probably.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
man.
all, buddy. Buddy's watching you. That's all that needed. That's all that needed was Rick James in there.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. And yeah, either that or then Prince beating everybody in basketball and making everybody pancakes.
Baby.
Let's keep going. Dave Chappelle just hangs out. I don't know how old Dave Chappelle would have been, but it would have been hilarious.
I know, right?
And you know what? Going down that path, I don't know if you guys have talked about this yet with Buddy Ryan, but Chris Carter has acknowledged multiple times that Buddy Ryan saved his life.
Yeah.
Like imagine what a guy that gets 11 touchdowns one year as a wide receiver, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was shocking. But like you said, had that bad drug addiction, and like you said, changed his life. He went on to having a nice career in Minnesota, and the rest is history.
Hall of Fame, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Chris Carter out of all. I mean, there's so many great receivers. Chris Carter might have had the greatest set of hands of any receiver I ever saw. I mean, how many one-handed catches did that dude make? I mean, he was
a lot.
As I said, all he did was catch touchdowns.
And the guy loved going.
And he did this.
People didn't like to.
Yeah, and he did it all as well without the oven mitts that receivers wear today.
Yeah. And
like he had gloves, but
real men catch with their hands. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Well, listen. Hey, Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us, man. Thanks a lot. It was a great time. Love talking, buddy. And, everybody make sure you check out the Farzy show. It's on every day, every morning, right? 6 o'clock?
Yeah, around there. Right there, Shawn. Right, Fuji?
Yeah. Hey, whenever time you come on, it's a great time. I watch.
Oh, God bless.
Plus,
it's very nice.
It's post game for having us. Thanks for coming on, man. Your show's great, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. No, anytime I'm having could come on. I got to get into Magic Night now because I didn't even my wife and I we didn't even know about this. I got an email today. I thought I was supposed to be at softball. That was going to be an easy thing to do. Now I'm at the school and the Wi-Fi's terrible, so I got to go in and watch some guy pull a rabbit out of his hat or something.
No little foot. Best of luck in softball, man.
Yeah, good luck.
Make those memories, man.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it. Good talking about Buddy.
All
right, cool, man. Have a good one.
See you, boys. You too. See ya.
Oh, man.
It's always a good time.
Yeah,
Buddy's watching.
So many.
And the Philly fans are too.
Yeah.
So many stories. I got a comment here. Mike Paprick Jr. says Randall and Chris Carter both had great years in Minnesota.
Yeah,
definitely, especially that 98 season. I mean, I think most of Philadelphia, I think, was rooting for Randall that year to get to the Super Bowl.
Oh, absolutely.
That would have been a hell of a Super Bowl, LA against Randall.
You got any more comments up there, Joey, that we missed?
No, I think we're all caught up. But yeah, man, hey, thanks again to Angelo and Mark for coming on. It was great time. I love getting into the stories and the impact that Buddy Ryan had. I have a I have a whole bunch of things here, like notes on Buddy, his impact on the game and stuff. And, I wrote that in the article. So if anybody wants to check out the article,
great article, man. Check it out. Really.
Most of the time when we do these old schools, you know what I mean? Like I kind of, I like to go down the timeline and talk about the guy, but I feel like for Buddy and especially with having, Angelo and Mark on, I feel like it's more for me, Buddy Ryan is more about stories. You know what I mean? Like stories and experiences. Like I can, how many memorable games do they have? Like I'll bring up one, like the '89. Like the year, the Eagles are playing Washington down at RFK. And, you guys probably remember this. Randall signs the contract extension. Washington gets up 20-0. And Mike Papperton Jr. is talking about Randall and Chris Carter. Well, those two, Washington gets up 20-0. The Eagles had a great comeback. Randall throws for like 400 and some yards. And I think the players might actually carried – I feel like they might have carried Buddy off the field that
game. They did,
right?
It was that game. I think an Oilers game.
I think Chris
that they carried them off.
I think Keith Jackson had the game-winning touchdown.
He did, yeah, and Washington was ready to win, and I think I remember. I think it was Wes Hopkins and Seth Joyner played a big role in the play. Gerald Riggs broke out on a big run, and then somebody stripped the ball. Next thing you know, the Eagles ran it back, and then like you said, Fuge, like Keith Jackson catches a touchdown in the end zone. I mean, that was. But I remember that day, like, I could go back, like my grandfather, like for me, Buddy Ryan, it's these stories are more than just football. They're memories. Like I went to church with my grandfather that day, like we went and got donuts from, there was a place in, I think, Shawn, remember Lou Moore Bakery?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember getting donuts, and I'm sitting in my grandfather's basement, and me, my grandfather, my grandmother were watching the game, and when you talk about these stories and these experiences, I feel like that plays a role. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, it's just like the games, watching the games with my dad in the basement. An Oilers game, it's like you said, it just brings back great memories.
I don't think a lot of people knew this, but I believe Buddy Ryan was on the coaching staff of the '69 or when the Jets won. '69? No.
Yeah, he actually was. Yeah, Buddy was on that staff. In fact, he played a big. He actually was credited with the Colts offense was vaunted. I mean, they had Johnny Unitas back then, and what did he held them to 3 points?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then Buddy was actually, I mean, Buddy's career, like he was with that Jets team. Then he went to Minnesota. He was the defensive coach for the Purple People Eater.
Yeah.
So what did he win? 2 Super Bowls? Jets and the Bears?
Yes. Yeah, 2 Super Bowls. And of course the Bears, I mean, who could forget that? I mean, he's the last coach in the NFL, or assistant coach, I should say, to be carried off the field.
I mean, him and Dick, you didn't see eye to eye. They couldn't stand each other.
Yeah, Fuji, you and I were talking about this before the show. You said, what was it you said about the Bears players or something? You said the Bears players when Neil Armstrong was fired, like they went to management because they wanted to keep Buddy. What was that story about?
It was one of Buddy's. Matter of fact, I did look this up, and it was 1981 when they fired that head coach of the Bears. They wrote the players wrote a letter asking George Halas to keep Buddy Ryan on the staff when they hired Ditka.
Yeah, and let's be honest, that couldn't have been. I mean, you look at 2 guys that had huge egos. Mike, the Hall of Famer Mike Ditka, right? And then you got Buddy Ryan. I mean, they almost. I have in here. They almost came to blows, like that great season in '85. Yeah. Their only loss, they almost went to blows at halftime.
Miami beat them that year, I think.
Yeah, it was a Monday night. It was a Monday night in Miami, and again, we all love, obviously Buddy with the memories. Buddy was a great defensive mind, but the one thing about Buddy's defense, and we saw that a little bit here in Philly at times, if you found a way to protect the quarterback, you could exploit the secondary. And in that Miami game, Dan Marino, hit the Marks brothers, and I think they put like 38 on them.
Yeah, I forget what the score was, but that was a team that knocked the Bears together, winning, being undefeated.
Yeah, but a great run of success here. Buddy comes to Philly in '86. Like as we touched on before with Angelo, the team was downtrodden. Let's keep it real. The 80 after Vermeil left, the Eagles were no different than like the Jets and the Browns. I mean, this was a shitty football team.
They were horrible under Marion Campball.
Yeah, I mean, Marion Campbell, there was no juice. I mean, the team almost moved to Arizona, like you said.
Well, yeah, like I said, that was the only good thing Brandon did was prevent they were basically sold, and Raymond stepped the hell in and saved the day. It's probably the only good thing he ever did for this city. Saving that franchise, saving the Eagles franchise.
Yeah, so then, Buddy comes in with a lot of bluster, coming off the Super Bowl with the Bears, and gave the city some confidence. And 86 they struggled. They were like 5-10-1, but then he started, Randall started playing, and towards the end of that year, you could see some growth. You know what I mean? Randall would make some plays. The 87 season we touched on, you had 87 draft, you bring Jerome Brown into the fold, and Chris Carter comes with the what did they have?
It was a supplement, right? That's how they got Reggie White from the USFL.
Yeah.
I think then the Eagles buy the rights. I forget.
Buy the rights.
Yeah, from the Memphis Showboats.
Memphis Showboats.
For like $1 million, I believe.
Vendetta from the Philadelphia Stars. Yeah, I mean, my dad had season tickets to the USFL. Man, that was fun. But
I went to the Stars' first game. They played at the Vet when they played the New Jersey Jones.
Yeah. A lot of great memories.
Yeah, so 87 you have to strike, and in my eyes that was the turning point. We touched, with Buddy sticking up for his players, Randall improving. Reggie White had like 21 sacks or 20 sacks in like 12 games. I mean, it was arguably the best season ever from a defensive lineman.
The scabs, that's what they called the replacement players.
Yeah.
The scabs.
Well, and that was the reason Buddy did the fake spike against Dallas, because the venerable Tom Landry, Mr. Class, a lot of their starters, crossed the picket lines, and they beat the Eagles. In the replacement game.
Yeah.
So then Buddy gets his
revenge.
Angelo touched on it earlier. I do think that was the turning point, and that was the start of the Buddy era, because the fans totally got behind it because everybody hated Dallas, and then the players were like, "Hey, you know what? This guy has our back, and he's sticking up for us."
Well, if you remember, I don't know if you guys remember that game, but I remember Randall took a knee and then threw the ball.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember, dude. I was 9 years old, bro. I was young. I was over my buddy Mike Edwards' house, and we were outside playing. And then we happened to be in his house at the end of the game, and the Eagles did that. And imagine like two little kids just like fist pumping and high fiving at like 9 years old. You know what I mean? We love Buddy Ryan.
I was 15. I remember that game.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, damn, you were 15. Yeah, well, you were a little older there, but yeah, we were real little. You know what I mean? And we loved it. And so the 87 team just barely missed the playoffs, and then 88 comes, and we touched on that. You had the Fog Bowl. 88 brought out Randall Cunningham. Was the first Monday night.
The ultimate weapon.
Yeah. Ultimate weapon. It was the first Monday night game they had since the Vermeil era. The Giants came here at the stadium, and Randall had that great play where he was like Gumby and like made Carl Banks miss. He hits Jimmy Giles in the end zone.
Yeah,
right.
The 88 team, and that was the other thing about Buddy Ryan. What an eye for talent. I mean, you look at some of his draft picks, like the 88 draft. The first two picks were Keith Jackson in the first round. From Oklahoma, and the second round, the Hall of Famer Everett Galen, cornerback from Arizona. You know, so
Awesome.
yeah, so he adds these two guys on. The team makes the playoffs for the first time. You know, they win the NFC East. They sweep the Giants that year, make the playoffs for the first time since 1981. And, you know, Buddy goes to Chicago, blaring horns. And, you know, to this day, and Angelo said this earlier, you know, to this day, that was their best run to win the Super Bowl. Because if you guys remember, 49ers won the Super Bowl that year. They beat the Bengals in that great game.
Oh, the Eagles were up. The Eagles were up by like, it was a 21-0 in '89, and Montana brought the 49ers back and beat the Eagles.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think they sacked Montana like 11 times in that game.
Yeah.
You know, but to this day, that 88 team was their best shot. I mean, you know, because out of all the 49ers dynasty, that was their worst team. They were only 10-6 that year. You know, I mean, you know, if we had beaten Chicago, like I think they should have, because that first half they were up and down the field. I mean, it was like you said, Fuge, it was penalty. It was, you know, Anthony Toney, I think, had a false start penalty. You know, you had a couple turnovers. You know,
dropped in the end zone.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, drop pass in the end zone.
Or a couple.
But that was their best chance. And then the following year they go 11-5. They're a wild card. And as much as we love Buddy, I think that 89 season really showed the warts. Because they host the Rams here New Year's Eve day. In a rainy day.
Flipper Anderson.
What'd you say, Fuge?
Flipper Anderson and Henry Ellard torched them.
Jim
Everett.
Yeah.
Jim Everett torched them.
Yeah, or as Jim Rome would say, Chris Everett.
Chris Everett. And he knocked
Chris Everett.
He suckered him right off the chair.
Yeah, I'll never forget that was right when ESPN2 just started. I think, what was that, like 93, 94 or something like that?
Right on live TV. Couldn't get better.
You know what, though? I don't blame Jim. No. I mean, that Jim Rome had a lot of balls, though. I mean, not for nothing, but Jim Everett was a quarterback in this. Show a little bit of respect. You know what I mean?
True.
I don't know. I kind of wish he did beat his you know what.
Right.
Mike Pappernick Jr. says Andy brought the glory back, and Dick and Doug and Nick win Super Bowls, but Buddy Ryan will always be a god in Philly. Totally agree.
Amen to that.
It's just like we said, it's just a damn shame that the offensive line was never good enough. Randall just couldn't get it done in the big spot. So 89 they're good again, and then we get to the end of the era. Coming into the last season, 1990. Buddy goes into his last year as a coach, and you got to figure Norman Brayman's kind of getting tired of hearing that he's the guy in France. I mean, Norman Brayman had his issues, obviously, but I mean, imagine you're the owner of the team and you got a guy calling you the guy in France. I mean, you're not going to be too cool with that. You know what I mean?
That was a classic.
Yeah,
he loved it. You're right.
That was great.
Yeah, but the 1990 season, though, to Buddy's credit, they actually did add to the offense. I mean, before the 90 season, they go out and they draft Arkansas Fred Barnett and they draft Calvin Williams. So
Mike Bellamy.
Yeah, well, it's ironic. Mike Bellamy was the guy they picked first. He was a second-round pick, and he was the bust. Mike Bellamy from Illinois.
He got hurt, I think.
Yeah, yes, he did.
He got hurt. Yeah, he. What'd you say, Shawn?
Hurt his knee.
Okay. Yeah. Well, he never panned out. And then if you guys remember it, early in the 1990 season, they started out 0-2. I was actually at that Arizona game. The week 2, they lost to the Giants on a Sunday night. The eventual world champion Giants, and then week 2 they play Arizona. With Neil Lomax and all them guys or whatever. Yeah. And I'm at that game, and they go 0-2, a lot of people thought Buddy was going to get fired. Like, well, not fired right then, but the very following week they had to play at LA against the Rams. And a lot of people were saying that might have been, he might have been coaching for his job in that game because they were 0-2. If they go 0-3, he might get fired. Well, they wind up winning that game. They go 10-6. That's the year of the body bag game. And that's also the year where Randall's a finalist for MVP in that year. I think that was the ultimate weapon.
Oh, no weapon on Sports Illustrated cover.
Yeah, so Buddy, Buddy's in the last year of his contract. They go 10-6. They have the body bag game. They host Washington at the stadium, and unfortunately, Buddy's last game here goes out with a whimper. I mean, Randall gets benched. They bring Jim McMahon in. The offense did absolutely nothing, and they lose. I believe it was 20. What was it? 20-6, I think.
Yeah.
They didn't even score a touchdown.
Yeah, so they
field goals.
Yeah, and you know what's ironic? They didn't score a touchdown in Chicago. They had a bunch of field goals.
Yeah.
I think they did score one touchdown versus the Rams, but it was kind of like meaningless. It was like at the end of the game.
Right.
I think it was, yeah.
So if you think about it, in 3 playoff games they had one offensive touchdown. That's just not going to cut it.
No.
And Buddy was fired the next day because I remember I was sitting in homeroom. It was my senior year. The judge in the homeroom came out and said Buddy Ryan was fired.
Wow.
I know. It was really, it was for all the great memories, being a kid and falling in love with football. And there were so many great memories, you know what I mean? But like that, in a way, like when you look at that last game, and it's a little sad because it's like that team had so much talent. There were so many good moments, and it's for all the great memories. It's unfortunate that they didn't get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
But hey, the memory lives on. The memories live on, and we had a lot of laughs and a lot of smiles. So,
oh yeah.
But yeah, Fuji, was there any, before we wrap up here, do you guys have any particular game that you remember, like where you were or what you were doing in that era?
I remember the body bag game because I was underage drinking in a bar called the Shore Road Tavern.
Nice.
On a Monday night. And 80 cents for a little but I just remember them beating up, bringing in Brian Mitchell as the emergency quarterback. It was Deerdorf and Al Michaels on the broadcast.
Yeah, I always remember Deerdorf calling Andre Waters Dirty Waters all the time. Yep. How about you, Shawn? I know you and I have a lot of memories we share together, but it was all after Buddy Ryan usually. We remember like the Coat Tight and the Ray Rhodes more, but But how about you in particular? Any when you were a kid?
The Houston Oilers game.
Yeah.
They
brought the house, we brought the pain.
Yeah. I mean, just
that was a straight ass beat down from pillar to post.
Yeah. I mean, I love with football, and you can attest too, just playing tackle football up across the street from your grandparents' house, Yeah.
Yeah. How about Maurice Wright? How about this iconic play? The Randall Cunningham, Fred Barnett, a safe attack of Bruce Smith.
Right. Fred Barnett.
Yeah.
That was a great one. And you brought up the Oilers game, and obviously we know that was right after Buddy got fired. But to this
that was 91.
Yeah, but to this day, I don't think I've ever seen a linebacker play a single game the way like Seth Joyner that night played like his hair was on. I've never seen that was like one of the greatest performances I think I've ever seen a linebacker have.
So true.
Yeah. Well, plus they knocked out two receivers, I think.
Yeah, they did.
They knocked was Webster Slaughter one of them?
Yeah,
he played.
Yeah. Yeah. There was,
and Jeffries, Haywood Jeffries. I think.
Haywood Jeffries, yes, yes.
They knocked him out too.
81 and 89.
Well, Hopkins took one out, like helmet to helmet.
Yeah.
And they just beat up Warren Moon. Like I forget.
They made him a ragdoll that night.
I forget how many times they sacked him. But.
Yeah, well, that was the Oilers. They were a good team, and they used to play that. Remember, they played that run and shoot.
Run and shoot.
Yeah, I think Buddy used to call it the Chuck and Duck.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, you know, we could go on and on, but you know, it's just you know,
I think we all hit it out the box, man. You know, just
yeah. So it was a lot of fun. Thanks again to Angelo and Angelo Cataldi and Marc Farzetta for coming on. Really appreciate them taking the time. And like we were saying earlier, you know, this is our first. This is I did some old schools in the past. I know you guys did a couple with me. You know, the '93 Phillies and stuff like that. But this is our first show in this new venture here. And you know, really excited to do it, and probably in about a month, and you know, have some good ideas coming up in about a month's time. Looking into doing the '80s Flyers, the Mike Keenan era. So you know, and in particular that run versus Edmonton. I mean, you know, I'm really excited to do that, and I feel like it's a good time to do it, considering we have no playoff hockey in this town. You know, and then
not for a long time,
right, and then, you know, a few weeks after that to a month after that, I'm thinking 0-1 Sixers, you know, because again, we have no basketball in this town. I mean, Christ, whoever runs the Wells Fargo Center, they want to charter a flight and like drop them off at like Tom Hanks' Castaway Island. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, it's crazy, you know.
Pretty much.
Big time.
And then I'm thinking sometime in the summer, you know, we'll do maybe 07 to 11 Phillies, including the 08 team. I'd like to do this isn't necessarily old school because it's modern day, but I'd like to do a Jeff Lurie show. And, you know, obviously we're a Philadelphia theme because we all are from Philadelphia, but I think it'd be cool to do a sports show. So I'm going to hold my nose when I say this, but you know, when football season no, seriously, when a good story is a good story, right? So Maurice Wright mentioned the Bills. I'd like to do one on those Bills teams, you know, because they're a great story.
4 times, man.
They went to the Super Bowl. They went to the Super Bowl 4 straight years. A great story of perseverance. And
poor Scott Norwood.
Yeah, and I'm probably, you know what? I probably shouldn't say this because I'll probably lose like the whole audience. But I'm even considering. I think I'm going to do the '90s Cowboys, and it hurt. Hey. I'm holding my nose when I say it, but like I said, a story is a story, and you know, they for example, right? We're all diehard Eagles fans, but you have to like football to be an Eagles fan, right? So we all watched the draft this week. Well, I would contend that the Herschel Walker trade and the Jimmy Johnson trade chart and all that stuff helped make the draft as popular it is today, because I don't remember there ever being a draft war room cam until that Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah, and if you want to watch championships for the Cowboys, you just pop in that VHS. You know,
I know, isn't it great though that we say that?
It's funny you say that, Joe. I love when you hear Cowboys fans how many championships. Okay, you own the '90s. Props to you. But your ass wants to watch some Super Bowls. Pop in that VHS and maybe put in the beta.
Yeah.
Tape too as well.
Yeah, and another thing I was thinking too, after we get past, you know, Mike Keenan and the 01 Sixers, and I'd like to do Barkley era, you know, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And then I'm even thinking of eventually we'll put it out to the audience, you know what I mean, and see if there's, and after we get a few in us, you know, I'll put a question out, and if there's anything that people have an idea of what they'd like to do, you know what I'm saying? I think that'd be interesting. Mike Pappernick Jr. says the '90s Cowboys don't lose Jimmy Johnson, they might have won 4 or 5.
Well, definitely.
Thank God they did though, because boy, that would have been torture.
Oh, Switzer. I mean,
Yeah.
he just inherited that team. Jimmy Johnson built.
Well,
And you know another thing, not to get on that team, but I mean Aikman couldn't. We're saying Switzer was canceling practices early, and Aikman was like on fire, was pissed off about it.
Yeah, and one more before we wrap it up. Mike Paperner Jr. says, "How about the '83 Phillies with Paul Owens managing?" Yeah, we could get into that. I was even thinking of doing that whole run, like maybe do like the whole Schmidt era. You know what I mean? Schmidt, Boa, Luzinski. We could do the whole era. And like just like the Sixers. The Dr. J. The We Owe You one. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, thanks for everybody for checking us out. Thanks for Angelo and Marc Farzetta for coming on. It's been a blast.
Amazing
And
show.
I guess we'll put it out there. We'll be coming back probably in about a month or so. And I hope you all enjoyed this walk down memory lane. And we'll see you soon.
Go
Have a good one.
Take it easy.